and shoot them to the wind. That way somebody has a copy and somebody has reference data so they know what's going on. But if you take a look at it, it's interesting what you've got there, in my opinion. They were training everybody on how to make them. They had what was basically a classroom in the GP tent. Then in the larger cylinder tent you see, they were shown how to make them, and the trucks were there to make them. And that truck is, of course, the right size and shape for the storyline and the fictional nonsense that they put together with Oklahoma. There's a lot of other stuff that's come out since.
That was all taken before February 28th.
February 28th and before is when these pictures were taken, shortly before the Oklahoma bomb.
Charles, do you have the evidence?
All those pictures were all in their hands. That information was in their hands too, and the problem is that the good point, unfortunately, the grand jury, the people's grand jury is what it should have been, they did not fire and they did not get rid of the very man who fought every step of the way for that grand jury to take place. And so it's been taken over by the government again. Whereas the prosecuting attorney should work for the grand jury, instead, these individuals with the prosecuting office have virtually manipulated the grand jury a second time. And they're deflecting the information, if nothing else. But the effort was made. And again, do not be discouraged by that, because we have to make the effort. We have a clean conscience. We have done all that we can. You will not see it reported unless we report it ourselves in the Patriot movement. So when they try to claim that, these guys are hotheads and they don't do this, they don't do that, well, horse puppy, as we say. Very quickly, a couple of things were handed off to me by our friend George. One of them is Guard helps Latvia develop military. Now, there are no foreign troops in America again. First of all, keep that in mind. But it might be noted that the chief of the National Guard Bureau asked the Michigan National Guard to participate in this project as of 1992, partially because of the large Latvian population in Michigan. So in other words, when you bring foreign troops, what this is admitting to is when you bring foreign troops into the country, you identify the population group in an area through the ethnic surveys that have been done, through the population census, and you can implant foreign nationals where you need to at their discretion. And they use those census numbers to get the job done. It's proper intelligence. But it's interesting and note, remember, there were no foreign troops in Michigan except since 1992. Guys, this is 1997. That's 5 years where they absolutely positively denied it. You're going to find this more and more, that after the fact, little bits and pieces are going to start coming out that are going to backdate everything we've been talking about. And this is just a small fingernail clipping. By the way, another point. We have so many things we can cover because we're behind the times here a little bit. Everybody remembers it's the anniversary of Roswell, right?
Yes.
The aliens. Okay. The border back. Well, did everybody notice when they did all the coverage of the border back down there in Roswell that nobody did any live footage of the air base? Did you notice that normally whenever they go to the air base, they always come out there and they take the pictures? This is the hangar where it all happened. Right here, that building, that empty building with nothing in it is where it happened. Which is okay. But they can't do that now. There's a reason. The Luftwaffe is there. The entire base is occupied by the Luftwaffe. We've got a past stack of pictures, and I've got all the negatives about that deep, right there, about 7 inches, showing all of the tens of thousands of troops that came in. The reason they wanted to concentrate on those museums in Roswell is because they didn't want to go down the street and show you the real aliens that truly exist, that are, touchy-feely flesh and blood. And that's the Germans that are there, along with other foreign troops. Case in point, 7 specific bases alone have been handed over to the Luftwaffe in the last 2 years. Now, I'm a little confused again, because wouldn't I rather have Americans on those bases, and wouldn't I rather keep our forces intact and functional and operational? In fact, you get 4 times your bang for the buck if you make more National Guard and Reserve units, so that you can bolster our capability to continue to maintain proficiency in training. And when the time comes, it doesn't take as long to remobilize your forces in the event you go into a global war like with China, which they keep hinting at. Oops. Now here again, shades of 1939 and 1940 all over again, because we all know what's happened in Australia with the, well, of course this wasn't happening either. There is no gun confiscation taking place in Australia, except for the big piles of guns you're now seeing in the scrapyards. Again, it's not happening, go back to sleep, go back, that'll be full of you, sorry. And this is all stuff that's, again, it was happening, it was being discussed, and key people were told to buy them time. And there are people even in the paper who go, oh no, nothing like that can be happening. Sorry kids, now it's been in Time magazine, it's even in the New York Times. They have this one picture showing literally mountains of the weapons that they're presently chopping up and cutting up and destroying the rest of the way. And it is reality, it has happened. Problem is this, there's only 32,000 military people in Australia's Army and Navy, and Air Force. They're now virtually gutted. They also destroyed most of their strategic weapon or strategic reserve rifles, mostly FNFALs, or the All-1A ones, as they call them. And these rifles were the backbone of what they were going to rearm troops with. They now have 31,000 rifles for 32,800 troops. We haven't seen this since just before World War II when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, and Americans, and I know right here in Michigan, went down to Australia and were issued whatever the Australians had in the way of 22 caliber rifles, muzzle-loading shotguns, anything else they could get their hands on, because there weren't enough weapons to go around for the Australian military, and they weren't going to give them to the U.S. troops. So they gave them the hand-me-downs. We're right back to being set up yet again. And China has received the industry, they've received the resources. Oh, and a lot of American bases too, by the way. We all know about Long Beach, right? How many people here are familiar with the Long Beach story? For those of you who are not up to speed on that, that has continued. It got coverage, we focused on it, people drew attention to it, and now it's business as usual. There's an excellent tape that was done here about 3 months ago showing the John Paul Jones at the Long Beach Naval Station. There is a central mast. Off the main mast, there is an American flag flying on one half of the ship, and on the other side of the mast, there is now a communist Chinese flag flying in equal stations on the U.S. fighting ship. And that is videotaped and photographed. Whoever did it in order, the officer in charge knows better too. That is a direct contradiction to anything that he swore allegiance to. Another case in point. Of course, we all know that the $100 bills have changed, right? Well, the $50 bill. And have you noticed something about these people on the new currency? They never smile! With good reason. Now look at, useless Grant. I'm sorry, Ulysses. They call him useless after the war for another reason, because the banksters got hold of him. But if you'll notice, if you look at this picture, he ain't smiling at all. He had a little grimace before, but now it looks like, oh my God, here they come. Now, I haven't seen it yet, but if you recall, in the new currency, which of course doesn't exist, none of this is happening, this is not taking place. It is not taking place currency. You have a watershed area over here. Now, if you have the new $100 peso, or the new 100 pesos, as we call them, the new 100 pesos, when you hold them up to the light, you can see a face in that watershed area. Go to the bank and get one and have a lot of fun. Ask people who it is. It looks like a demon or death mask of Ben Franklin. How many people have seen that? Took a few of you had to take the time to do it. Yeah, it almost looks shut. Yeah, the face is all puffed up, the eyes are squinted shut. So God only knows what this guy looks like that's in this watershed this time with a beard. I'd be fascinated to see how this turns out. But again, this is a warning and a release. And oh, by the way, your currency's not being devalued. Oh, really? I brought this up the other day. How much were you paying for a pound of chicken last year? I was paying 49 cents a pound. I could get it for 39 cents or even 29 cents a pound. 79 cents to 89 cents for the same pound of chicken from the same place. They haven't changed their carrier. They haven't changed, haven't changed who they shop with per se. But we all know that they're kind of getting rid of the competition, aren't they, in the meat industry? Yeah, Tyson inflation. There we go. Exactly. That's it. The point is that remember the basic rule of inflation. And a lot of you people are familiar with how this money system is supposed to work as opposed to the way it does work right now. It's not that it takes more money to get something. It's that you get less for the paper currency that's generated. In other words, this is taking more of these nonsense bills as the toilet flush is developing, and you're seeing everything hyper-accelerate in terms of costing it. Example, I've had a lot of people, if I haven't heard this once, I've heard this 20 times in the last 2 weeks. Automotive parts. Automotive parts